Thank you again for the opportunity, Matt, for inviting me. So my name's Scott Wallace. I'm currently a law student at Griffith University, and I've got a background in the Bachelor of Science, looking at marine ecology as my main area of interest. Now, the reason I'm here today is because I've got some important information that I would like to share with you all. I think as the younger generation, going through the education system now, you guys are the change agents. You're the next group of change agents that are coming through society, and you deserve nothing less than the facts and the truth to be given to you, to empower you to make decisions that that best align with who you are as people. And a lot of this information I'm going to be sharing with you today is, it's been suppressed, it's been kept away from throughout the whole sort of society. Coming through years of sustainability and conservation studies, this information wasn't even told to me. So I'm here to sort of bring everything that I've studied and learned and understood and found out, synthesize it to you, and hopefully give it to you in an easy to understand way and get you guys thinking about some of these issues. So today's presentation is going to be on the animal agriculture industry, and we're going to be looking at the impacts, also the solutions and the action. So just so you guys understand the structure of today's presentation, I'm going to be running through quickly what is the animal agriculture industry, and then looking at the environmental impacts of this industry. So looking at it from the perspective of land, waste, water, air in terms of emissions, and also the effect on animals themselves. I want to run through what's being done to address these issues, and then looking at some of the solutions that we can do as individuals to address this issue. And when it comes to the solutions and also the transformation of culture, I'm going to be firing away a lot of information at you guys, some new perspectives, some new opinions that may challenge the way you see the world, may challenge your beliefs and understanding of the way things are. And it's okay for you to feel a bit uncomfortable with some of these things, because some of the concepts and things we'll be discussing just may shake you up a bit, but just understand that everyone is going through their own process of learning and a journey of understanding. And then hopefully at the end, when it comes to, if you guys have any questions, we can have a bit of a discussion as well. And my intention is just to create and it requires everyone's help. If we can create a safe space at the end for people to ask questions. It may seem like a simple question, it may seem something a bit controversial, or it may be in the back of your mind, but please ask it. If everyone can just respect the fact that some people don't know things that we know, and hopefully I can address your questions and we can have a bit of a yarn about some of the issues and anything that comes to your mind. So, kicking it off, animal agriculture industry. So, does anyone want to share with me, firstly, has anyone heard of the term animal agriculture before today? Put your hand up if you have. Right, so say maybe a quarter of the class. It's not uncommon. Most people don't know what the animal agriculture industry is. I was only introduced to the term a few years ago through after I finished my studies. So it's great that some people are aware of what the animal agriculture industry is. Now, so the animal agriculture industry, it's a global industry consisting of small scale farms up to the large scale industrial farms. It's the whole system that produces a whole variety of animal products and also animal byproducts. So all the animals that we exploit for food, including pigs, chickens, cattle, we extract a whole variety of products such as milk, other dairy products, eggs as well. But it's all meat, dairy, eggs, and also byproducts such as leather and a whole variety of byproducts from animals. So picture it's the global industry that we're going to be talking about today. And when we go through some of the sections, I'm going to highlight to you what's a global statistic and what's an Australian or a Queensland statistic. Just so you know, okay, we're talking about Queensland, we're talking about Australia, or talking about the world in general. Excellent. So just starting with the environmental impacts on land. For the land impacts, there's a whole number of ways that this industry is affecting land and influencing land use. So for this graph, this map here, we've got the orange sections, which is cropland, and also the green sections, which is pasture. So the animal agriculture sector needs to clear a lot of land in order to firstly create a space where the animals can live in and they can enjoy themselves and cruise around. In Australia, we've got the majority of our land use for animal agriculture is grazing and pasture. So we'll clear a lot of land out, put the animals on there and let them feed off the natural grasses and vegetation, or we're clearing areas for the animals and then we're clearing land in other areas to grow food to then feed to those animals. So it's not just about when we see a farm and that's the only environmental impact on land that it's having. We've often cleared other areas to grow food to give to these animals. Now in the United States, a lot of the food given to the livestock industry is crops. So they're growing crops, big monocultures, clearing so much land to give food to the livestock. Here in Australia though, it's a lot of pasture stuff. So across the world, approximately 30% of the Earth's total ice-free land is being used for the animal agriculture sector. So this is a third of the land available for us to grow food, for housing, for everything, for nature and conservation. So it's using a lot of our land. As you can see, the map here just highlights the sections. Unfortunately, Australia is not on this map, but I will talk about the Australian stuff shortly. So we hear a lot about the destruction and the deforestation in the Amazon. Put your hand up if you heard about how concerning the Amazon rainforest is and clearing. Yeah. Now when we think about the Amazon, we often hear about the mega projects like dams and mines that are threatening the ecosystems. But the truth is 91% of the destruction that's happened in the Amazon rainforest has been due to animal agriculture. It's been mainly through beef livestock, and they're clearing so much land over in the rainforest and the jungles, burning it, and then there's literally nothing left over after these people have gone through. Now, the animal ag sector is the leading cause of habitat loss throughout the globe and also in Australia. Now, because we're clearing so much land and there's little disregard for all the animals that actually live in these forests. So in Australia, there's very little protections given to the animals that are in the native forest when the industry comes through and starts clearing and knocking down trees. Think about all the koalas that get hit out of their trees. Think about all the mammals and reptiles and birds that get squashed, buried, suffocated as they're going through clearing areas, or maybe animals that get caught in the forest areas when they burn to clear land for livestock. So it's an extremely destructive industry having a massive effect on land. Just getting to some of the national statistics. So here on the map for those that can see, this beige section is just giving you a brief rundown. This is a land use map, and each different colour highlights a different land use in Australia. So we can see, for example, the nature conservation of protected areas is the dark purple and the lighter purple. The beige area through the central sections through here and over in WA. This is area used for grazing on native vegetation. Now, that in combination with your modified pastures grazing, which is, you can see there's a lot of orange throughout this side, those two sections are what the animal agriculture industry is using in Australia. So this translates to 56% of Australia's total land, not just arable land or available land that's good for agriculture. 56% of Australia's total land is just used for grazing livestock. So over half of our country is being used just to allow animals to roam around, eat some grass, and we've prioritised the feeding of grasses to some animals over vegetation that's been here for hundreds and thousands of years. Now, we can see the largest land use in Australia is grazing, followed by natural environment. We can see this little section down here in the yellow, and this is the amount of land we're using just for plant foods for human consumption. So all the plant foods that we're eating in Australia, that's come from Australia, that's all been grown in a little area. Now, you can't really see mining on this side, you can't really see the amount of land used for factory farms. Urban developments, very, very small as well. So we can see this is where most of our land in Australia is going towards. So bringing it more locally, here in Queensland, we've had land clearing on a rate that has been, it's been of global concern. Now, between 1988 and 2009, we had some of the highest rates of clearing in the world. On average, they were clearing 400,000 hectares per year. How the area of the school, do you have any idea of how what the land area of the school is?
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah. I can't equate it to anything right now, but this is a lot of land. Like this is insane. The area of land that's been cleared during that time. Now a lot of that land is cleared like this. They go a big chain and they put it in between two tractors and they literally just pull it through the forest. So it doesn't look like we're giving all the animals in here much concern at all. This is the most common method for land clearing. They can go through, do the trees one by one or ring bark them, burning as well, but this is the quickest, most effective way to clear land. And unfortunately, that's the quickest, most effective way to kill wildlife as well. Now, between those 2 decades, only 1.5% of all that land cleared was for settlements. So that's inclusive of like cities that are expanding, and also some of your rural towns that are expanding, and for other developments. Only 1.5% was used for settlements. The mining industry. We hear a lot about the mining industry, especially here in Queensland. How it's threatening our forests, they're using too much land and water. However, during those 2 decades, only 0.5% of all that land cleared was for mining. So there's a huge focus on mining and effects on the environment. And when it comes to habitat loss and destruction, this is almost insignificant compared to how much land is being used for the biggest culprit. 92.6% of all this land cleared during those 2 decades was for animal agriculture, for livestock, mainly beef livestock. So people say, oh, we need to cut down the population because the cities are growing too much and they're clearing land. This is how much we can, account for clearing from settlements. This over here, the animal ag sector is the biggest culprit: habitat loss, loss of species, and deforestation. So creatures like the cute little cuddly koala here, they usually have somewhat of a home range. They won't move out too much. So when their houses and homes are destroyed and their trees are gone, they may return to the same area. However, they come back and what's there? Nothing. And this may lead to competition between koalas, and they might get aggressive. Might be predators, like big predatory birds will often eat all the reptiles and other small mammals that are running around on the land. This is essentially like having your house destroyed from underneath you. You've had no consent in the issue. People just come along, taking away everything, probably killed off some of your family as well, and you're left with nothing. This was a photo from Queensland, I believe. It's a standard practice. It's not something that happens overseas. Not only overseas. So waste. So globally we've got between 50 to 60 billion land animals that are slaughtered each year for the animal agriculture industry. And because there's so many animals, they obviously need to eat a lot, and they obviously poop out a lot as well. So there's so much waste coming from the animals in the animal agriculture sector. Now, in the United States, there's 130 times more waste from animals than there are all the humans in the US. So think of how many people in the US, a couple 100 million or whatever it is, and there's 130 times more waste than all the people. So fortunately for the animal ag industry, there's no pesky laws in place to require them to treat the waste and dispose of it nicely. We've got toilets, we put our waste into clean water, which frustrates me sometimes, because that's just the way things are at the moment. All this waste into rivers, onto land, onto our food, sprayed onto crops when it gets contaminated water bodies. It's really quite insane. So 3.1 million kilos of crap per minute is created in the US from the animal ag sector. This is so much. Now, a farm with only 2,500 dairy cows creates the same amount of waste for a city of over 400,000 people. Okay? Now, if we look at Australia's statistics, I believe we've got about 1.2 million dairy cattle. So, divide 1.2 million by that. and multiply it by a city of 400,000 people, and we've got a lot of waste that's been created in this country. We just don't see it because it happens out west and it's not usually in our city, so we're so disconnected from these impacts. Now, in addition to the waste that's created, this sector is having a massive effect on our water quality, but also our water availability. So all that waste I was talking about has to go somewhere, usually leaches off into rivers and streams and lakes and stuff like that. And we are usually taking water from those water courses to spray on our food, to grow them, or to consume ourselves. So lots of water pollution from the animal ag sector. Now 60% of all the water in Australia is used for agriculture. Now I just want to specify here, the latest estimate that I found was 43% of that was used for pasture and hay production. So this stat here isn't saying 60% of Australia's total water availability is being used for animal agriculture in general, but the overwhelming majority of that water is used for animal ag. So close to half of all that, 67%, was just used for pasture and hay. So that's the water just going in to grow the food to feed to the animals. And that's not even including the water that's given to animals to drink, for them to sustain themselves. You can really see so much water is going towards this industry. Industry is also affecting water quality, as I've said briefly before, and physical damage of water courses. So when there's so much livestock, and they're not, ecologically speaking, they're not, hooved animals aren't meant to be in our country. They have a huge effect on the landscape, and there's so many, and there's millions and millions of cattle and a whole variety of livestock in our country. They trample a lot, they destroy a lot of banks, and it leads to increased erosion, sediment load and turbidity. So we're quite concerned about the reef, for example, here in Queensland, but around 70% of all the sediment and all the dirty water that's not clear, if you want to consider that, is coming from the animal agriculture sector, from the agriculture sector. So much of that runoff is affecting the reef. There's increased bacteria, it's more the crap that's in the water, pesticides, herbicides, nutrients. It's a major threat to the Great Barrier Reef and really affects our water availability and our water quality. So there's going to be in the future, wars and conflicts over resources, and water scarcity and water security is going to be a big issue. And look how much water we're wasting on an industry which is so inefficient and really very, very not resourceful. So. Alright, so greenhouse gases and climate change. Now, this is just a simple diagram just to explain to you guys some of the sources of greenhouse gases from this industry. So we've got, as we found out before, there's so much land clearing, and when we are clearing trees and burning them and destroying that land, there's so much greenhouse gases that are being put off. But we've got the greenhouse gases coming from the land clearing, which is a huge amount of greenhouse gases. All the livestock, when they're eating and they're pooping around and they're farting and all this stuff, there's actually a lot of methane coming from the cattle and livestock. So we shouldn't underestimate how much greenhouse gases is coming from the cows themselves. There's a whole variety of sources for greenhouse gases as well, but just to simplify things, just for starters, so the global transport sector accounts for 13% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Now, this was an estimate done by the United Nations, one of the United Nations bodies, and they said across the world, 13% transport. Now, any guesses as to what's the percentage of greenhouse gases globally coming from the animal agriculture sector? Does anyone have a guess? Yeah. 87%. 87%? Yeah.
Around 62 area.
62. Alrighty, so they're quite high estimates. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if it may be that high at some stage, but some of the most conservative estimates only put it at 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Now again, this is an estimate done by the United Nations Food and Agricultural Authority. Super conservative, it's quite restrictive. they didn't take into account a whole variety, especially the land use and all the land that's cleared for this industry, which we know is insane. They haven't factored in these things. They haven't factored in the greenhouse gases coming from the cows themselves and their respiration. There was an estimate done by a group called World Watch Institute. They estimated, taking everything into account, 51% of global greenhouse gas emissions is coming from the animal agriculture industry. This is insane. So we often hear about climate change. What are some of the words we often hear related to climate change? What do we think about in addition to climate change? We hear like fossil fuels and energy and transport and these sectors. And it's important to focus on those. But if we've got an industry which is accounting for half of our global greenhouse gas emissions, why are we not focusing our efforts on this industry? So if anyone's interested, all these stats and figures that statistics that I'm using, they're all been referenced. It was just too much to include them in the slides, but if you want a specific reference, let me know and I'll send it through to you. But all this information is available online, but it's quite hard to find. So in Australia, when we look at measuring greenhouse gas emissions, there's a couple of ways to model those emissions. When we look at it over a 20-year time frame, so a short-term time frame as opposed to a longer-term time frame, 49% of Australia's greenhouse gas emissions attributed to the animal agriculture industry. I've gone through 3-4 years of environmental science and conservation studies, looking at what's happening in Australia in terms of environmental impacts. This was never told to me. The term animal agriculture wasn't mentioned once during my studies. Okay? Then to find out that this is, potentially the single largest issue we need to tackle to address climate change, this was quite concerning. Awesome. So the environment impacts on the animals. I'm just going to touch upon this quickly and then talk a bit more about the animals towards the end of my presentation, because they are often a neglected but very important consideration when it comes to environmental impacts. So these statistics are available on the Australian Bureau of Statistics. I took these off their website last night. So in the March quarter, which is 3 months before March, so the 3 months before March 2017, this is the number of livestock that has been slaughtered. So just to highlight to you, in 3 months, 162 million chickens were killed in 3 months.
Is this Australia or is this worldwide?
This is Australia. This is Australia. The Australian livestock industry. Pigs, 1 million. Lambs, baby lambs. Okay, 5.6 million lambs were slaughtered. Now, also interesting here, calves. You see 113,000 calves were slaughtered. So imagine multiplying that by 4, and that's what we get in 1 year in Australia.
Hey, why are they calves and lambs? Why wouldn't they kill the sheep and cows?
Yeah, I'll chat about that towards the end, but it's a very important question. Awesome. So just in summary, the animal and you probably would have got a feel for it through those slides, but the animal agriculture industry is an absolute ecological disaster. So this industry is the leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, water pollution, habitat destruction, suffering, you name it. This is at the core of so many environmental issues and concerns. This is the single biggest industry affecting our planet. So the United Nations back in 2006 released a report which is saying livestock is a major threat to the environment, and that we need to take substantial steps to address this issue. Now, I hadn't heard about this report. So if I knew that the UN had said, hey, this is a massive issue that needs to be addressed, I'd like to have heard about it. But we don't hear about this stuff from our governments, from environmental organisations either. Okay, so what's being done? So in terms of addressing this issue, it's quite a tricky one. A lot of these environmental and conservation groups will work with corporations and affecting things from the top down, as we call it, when we're trying to change the government policies. We do need that approach, but we also can tackle things from the bottom up. Now, we know this is a global concern. The industry is just taking over so much. It's clearing so much land. It's driving a whole number of environmental issues. Now, unfortunately, these environmental organisations aren't doing much on the face of things to address this issue. If you jump on any of these websites, Greenpeace, ACF, Wilderness Society, even WWF, you will struggle to find the facts and the sort of the message which should be put across, which says this is the most destructive industry on our planet. They'll give you little snippets of information, and if you follow them back through the databases, you do get a sort of clear picture of how destructive it is. However, they're not being upfront and just saying this is the biggest issue that we've got on our planet. Now, one of the reasons why they aren't being so straight up and honest with people is because of some of the solutions. The solutions to the issue mean that these guys may not be taking as many steps as they could be. Solutions. The United Nations urges for a global move to a meat and dairy-free diet. A global shift towards a vegan diet is vital to save the world from hunger, fuel poverty, and the worst impacts of climate change, the United Nations report says. So, this article is available on The Guardian if anyone wants to check it out. I hadn't heard about this until last year. Okay? Now, why haven't we been told? The United Nations, the biggest group concerned with international law, has said we need to address this issue. This is the most appropriate way we think we can start addressing this issue. Shifting towards a plant-based diet through government policies and also on an individual consumption level. So it seems quite simple. Way to deal with the issue, change our diet, sweet, smooth sailing. But it may not be that simple for us, especially as individuals. And I want to chat a bit about why this may not be so easy shortly. So just running through quickly, what is a plant-based diet? So this is what the United Nations has advocated for. A plant-based diet, actually without looking at the screen, can someone tell me what a plant-based diet is? What can you eat, what can't you eat?
Well, like with veganism, it's like you can't use or eat any animal products or byproducts, but like
So veganism advocates for not using any animal products or byproducts, And in addition, also just a list of things up here means no meat, no fish, no eggs, no milk, no butter, no gelatin, and any animal products. So what a plant-based diet does focus in on here is fruit, vegetables, nuts, legumes, grains, plant-derived substitutes, and there's a whole number of benefits to a plant-based diet. But the main reason UN is advocating for this is to address environmental concerns. This diet does use less resources than a meat, dairy, and a non-plant-based diet does. So this is what a plant-based diet looks like. Some delicious foods up here. So it's about substituting those products. We've got salads, fruits, vegetables, lasagnas, pizzas, you name it. It's some really, really delicious food. So it's not about missing out on anything. That all seems so simple. We've got this global industry which is destroying the planet, and the solution is just if we change our diet, then everything can be, on the right track. It's not so easy, and it's important that we understand what some of those challenges are, and what are the challenges associated with making that shift on an individual level, on a community level, or from a government perspective level. So just running through something quickly, a person who follows a vegan diet produces approximately 50% less CO2, uses 1/11th of the oil, 13th of the water, and also 1/18th of the land compared to a diet, and this compared to a meat-eating diet, but this is a heavy meat-eating diet, lots of eggs, lots of dairy, lots of meat. So you're sort of comparing the two extremes of diets here. We can make a difference by eating less animal products. That's the true state of things, and replacing them with plants. So if someone had told me during my studies, or even when I was your age, that the quickest, cheapest, most effective way for me to reduce my environmental footprint and minimize it is to go vegan and adopt a plant-based diet, then I would have made that shift a very long time ago. But this information isn't told to us. We're not told the effects of this destructive industry the information is so suppressed at a university level, from an environmental organisation level, even from an educational level such as this. But this, to have an opportunity to talk to you guys today is quite a privilege. So the last few sections where I'm really going to fire some things at you guys, I get you to think critically and sort of go within yourself and your mind and your heart to think about some of the things I want to be addressing. So you go to your friend's place for dinner, and your friend's parents, they serve up this meal. Now have a look at it, think about how you feel. Now, can I get some comments from people? How do you feel about seeing this meal? It's yum. So, what is it? What is it? What? Just have a look at it. Does it look delicious? So it's generally the general vibe of things that people like. Yeah, looks like a bean meal. I'd like to give that a shot. So we got using positive associations with this meal. So you ask, you start eating the meal, it's so delicious, and you're like, man, I really want to find out what's in this. And you ask your host, you're like, man, what is in this lasagna? And they're like, well, the secret's all in the meat. And you're like, okay, cool, yeah, sweet. You use half a kilo of well-seasoned, well-cooked, golden retriever dog meat. Okay, so how do we feel now, knowing that this was made of dog meat? All of a sudden, dogs, yeah, dog meat. So all of a sudden, we're not so keen on eating this, alright? Put your hand up if you still would. If we were looking at the meal and think, okay, maybe it's chicken, maybe it's cow, it seems delicious, but all of a sudden we go, okay, this is actually dog meat. All of a sudden our minds and our hearts have just gone all over the place and we're so confused. Now, it's interesting that, we're happy to consume a meal knowing that it's made of cow flesh or chicken flesh, but as soon as we realise it's a dog, it's like, nah, I'm not going to go there. It's a very interesting thing that happens. So this meal hasn't changed at all, but it is actually our perspective of it that's shifted the most. So the ability to look at things from another perspective can really shape how we feel and how we think about things. Now this is actually a vegan lasagna, by the way. There's no animal products in this at all. So shift your perspective back to something more decent. There we go. So have you ever wondered why we love dogs, why we eat pigs, and why we wear cows?
We like it.
Because we like it. Yeah, so there's a whole number of reasons why this is the case. Now, the reason why, so this is a photo from a woman called Dr. Melanie Joyce, and she did her PhD on the psychology of eating meat. So she spent 4 or 5 years just researching why people eat meat and all the sort of science, psychological science behind that. And her thesis crafted a term and identified this thing called Carnism. Now, I don't expect anyone to have heard of this, but if you have heard of this term, can you please raise your hand? Awesome, Carnism. Awesome, so a few people. I only found out about this in the last few years. Now, what Carnism is, it's actually the invisible belief system or ideology that conditions people to eat certain animals. So out of all the millions of species we've got out there, cultures across the world will have only decided that these animals are edible, these are inedible, these are pets, these are for conservation, and it's our constructs. There's no objective difference in terms of their moral significance. It's just the value we put on those animals. Now, this belief system is the sort of dominant ideology within our society. It's the dominant ideology within education, within government, within law. This is the underlying reason why we love dogs, eat pigs, wear cows. It has a lot to do with our culture. So when we have, if someone asked me when I was younger, do I believe in eating animals? I would have been like, what do you mean do you believe in eating animals? I'd be like, that's just the way things are, bro. What do you mean? Well, thinking about it, we make choices every day with what we want to consume, and choosing to eat animals that choice stems from a belief system. that this is food, this is an edible animal. And that belief system across the globe is usually influenced by this. So if you can understand a bit more about Carnism, it'll give you an extremely fresh perspective on our choices when it comes to our relationship with animals. And it's important that we do question these things. Awesome. So Carnism is institutionalized, as I may have mentioned earlier. It's everywhere. Throughout finance, throughout education, religion, medicine, law. So under our legal system, animals are actually considered property. They're things. They're not a subject, they're actually an object. This is something that's quite concerning that I've only started researching in the last few years studying law. The animals we have and we see around, and usually the ones on our plate, they're a commodity. They're something to be exploited and used. We often use the term, I own 2 dogs. Like, we own them, they're our property, they're our things. Put your hand up if you have pets, for starters. Wow, okay, huge. Put your hand up if you consider that animal to be part of your family. Yeah, of course, So we've got these creatures in our lives that are part of our family. There's other members of our family. We don't consider them to be property or things. That's, I own a mum, I own a dad, I own a brother. We don't talk like that. So our law actually makes the exploitation of animals an option because they consider animals to be property. Now, I don't think animals are property at all. That's just our way of justifying our exploitation of them. Animals are worthy of much more than a property status. They have moral significance, they're important, they've got their own lives, and they have their own rights to live and thrive and evolve without our interference. Excellent. So the last few sections, just on transformation of culture. We spoke about vegan and veganism earlier. Now, before today, or put your hand up if before today you hadn't heard, put your hand up if you had heard of the word vegan or veganism before. Wow, okay. Going back to when I was in high school, no. Would not have understood the term. I would have mainly pictured some crazy hippie with a tie-dye shirt hugging trees going, yeah, man. For sure. Like, this is wonderful that you guys have been exposed to this stuff. So, someone mentioned earlier that veganism is about, not contributing to purchasing animal products, not wearing them, and, not engaging in exploitation in that way. So, in addition to the diet, which is what the United Nations has advocated for that diet shift to a plant-based diet, vegan diet, there's a variety of components that fall under this broader philosophy of veganism. So, as someone mentioned earlier, it's about ultimately not exploiting animals and not considering animals to be property and trying to minimize our footprint and really start questioning our relationship with this planet and questioning our relationship with the animals we interact with. And unfortunately, most of the animals we interact with are usually on our plate, or in documentaries and stuff like that. There's a whole variety of reasons why people do go vegan. If people want to follow the United Nations suggestion, the 4th one there for the planet, this is again the quickest, cheapest way to minimize your footprint, to go vegan. And it's not possible for everyone in the world to go vegan. I must admit that. I don't think it is. There's people that live in, for example, the Arctic or nomadic cultures where they may not be able to grow crops on the ice or in the snow, so they have to resort to hunting. That's out of necessity, though. Here, we don't need to be consuming animal products to survive and thrive. There's myths that we need to eat animal products, that it's normal, natural, necessary. The slavery of humans was also at one stage considered normal, natural, necessary. However, it's about time we question what we've been taught and question things really critically and think about a lot of this. So other reasons why people go vegan, they may be drawn to it just for the compassion, and having respect for other creatures. Could be for non-violence, non-violence towards yourself, not putting, food that's come from suffering and harm into your body, not hurting other creatures, not hurting yourself, other people. For the people as well, put your hand up if anyone has watched the documentary Cowspiracy at all. A few people, okay. If you want to learn more about that, I'll talk about it at the end again, but Cowspiracy is a very interesting documentary to watch about the animal agriculture industry and its effect on the planet. we're growing enough grain in the world at the moment to actually end world hunger. We've got so much food, we've got enough to feed everyone who's hungry. But we are putting all that grain into inefficient industries, the animal agriculture industry, and we're actually putting more protein and calories into this industry than we're actually getting out through consuming those products. So we could end world hunger if only we didn't give all those food to the animals, if we actually ate it ourselves and distributed it around differently. So there's a myth of scarcity out there, which is not true. We have enough food, guys. It's just about where we move it and what we're putting it into. Obviously, for the animals, this is potentially one of the most important reasons why people do go vegan in the end. It could be just having respect and for justice for animals that don't deserve to be exploited in our day-to-day lives. We're slaughtering between 50 to 60 land animals a year for products and byproducts. As you saw how crazy it was in Australia, same thing's happening all across the world. That's excluding all the animals in the sea that we're actually killing and consuming. There's trillions of sea life that's being eaten and wasted, essentially. Someone spoke before about the dairy calves and the lambs as well. Now, the reason why we had slaughtered, say, around 100,000 dairy calves during that first quarter of the year is mainly because of the dairy industry. So a lot of people will become vegetarian, and all they're really doing is taking out the consumption of flesh from their diet, but we've still got eggs, milk and dairy, and these products actually have a really big effect on animals as well. I didn't realize this until the last few years, and my partner's she was vegetarian for 17 years when she was younger, didn't realize the effect of milk and dairy and eggs on animals. So the dairy industry is quite a cool industry. You guys can explore all this stuff in your own time, but I'm going to give you my current understanding on the way things are. Cows are mammals, and in order to have a baby, in order to create, so firstly the mother calves are actually forcibly impregnated. There's another word for that, I won't touch upon it, but they forcibly impregnate the mothers and then they give birth to a baby calf. Now, that's the reason why the mothers start creating milk, is actually to feed that to their babies, right? Now, because the babies would drink the milk that the mother has created for them and we wouldn't get that milk, they actually have to remove the calves from their mothers. So usually after a few days, they take away the baby calves. They may send them into the veal industry, which is it's a euphemism for baby cow meat, essentially, or they kill the baby calves. Now, the reason why we've got calves dying is because of the dairy industry. But also, they do send baby calves to be consumed. At the end of the mother's life, after she's had 4 or 5 calves, she's then what's considered spent. She's no use to the dairy industry, and they do kill that mother as well. They ultimately all end up at the same slaughterhouse. Doesn't matter if it's a free-range organic milk calf or whether it's the babies. They all ended up in the same slaughterhouse, unfortunately. Now, there's a whole number of myths and misinformation that is provided to us from the news, from industry, through advertising. We like to think that our food and products are coming from a safe place, a place of justice and respect and concern for animals. The truth is, a lot of it isn't, guys. I didn't realize this until I was in my early 20s, and then I started questioning where my food comes from and making the connection between what's on my plate and also what's had to happen for that food to get on my plate. So I think at our core, as a species, as individuals, we are filled with love, we're filled with compassion, we're filled with concern. But as we grow older, with our society and influence from parents and education and government and everything, we're actually conditioned out of that concern, that love for other animals. If I was to put a baby pig in here now, even a baby calf, I'm sure you guys would run around with it, you'd play with it, and you'd be hanging out with it. You wouldn't think, yes, dinner! You wouldn't. It's not an association that we make, right? And furthermore, if we had a cow in here, and I started punching it, kicking the cow and abusing the animal, who would let me kick the cow and abuse the cow? No one. That's right. So we're concerned about animals. We want to be looking after them. However, paying for products that come from animal origins usually involves a lot of suffering and a lot of harm. And the world will try to convince you and try to change your way of thinking and what you do away from that respect for animals. So please hold on to that concern you guys have for animals. It's extremely important. At your core, we are love, we are respect, we are concern. If I was to take any of you, even as a child, and put a rabbit in front of you and a carrot, my bet is you wouldn't be ripping the head off the rabbit and playing with the carrot. You guys will be eating the carrot, playing with the bunny rabbit. And that's who we are as a species. The whole world is literally working against us to have us not do that. And it's very, very concerning. Awesome. So there's a reason why, we've been stuck into these industries. We're paying people to exploit animals, and we are doing things that we wouldn't think are good. We're concerned about animals and their welfare. We want them to be looked after well. And the animal ag industry will use this to sell a product. They'll say, our chickens, for example, they're free-range chicken eggs, and the animals live a happy life and they're treated well. Animal welfare, people who follow animal welfare, what animal welfare focuses on is just how animals are treated while they're alive, while we're exploiting them. So, for example, a cow could live 4 or 5 years out on the grass, feeding. At the end of its life, though, it's still slaughtered, it's still killed. So we need to maybe look at, maybe animals deserve rights, not just the right to have a happy life, but actually a right to life. Not just to be reasonably treated well while they are alive. So be cautious about all these labels you see, because they will try to sell a product to you, and it will appease to your conscience, which is like, I want to do the good thing, I want to have the products which are good for the planet, good for the animals. Be careful, question every label you see and every claim. And question everything I've told you guys here today as well. Don't take anything I've said for granted. Look up the stats yourself, find out the truth for yourself. Don't take my word for it. So, essentially, a lot of the world has been operating off this perspective where humans are superior and animals are inferior. We consider ourselves to be the top of the food chain, where the most important species have the most moral significance. So this is how the majority of the world is operating, over here on the left-hand side. Now, right at the top, what do we have here? Man. What do we have here? Woman, female. Interesting, eh? So, what we've got, we've had, patriarchal dominance. We've had men who have made a lot of the decisions and owned a lot of the property, and they've sort of controlled the world in a way. And we've suppressed and subjugated women across the world to actually be considered inferior. We fought very hard to grant women's rights and for them to be considered equal. We still have massive pay gaps and stuff like that, but we also consider other animals to be, obviously they're all less important than us, but some are even less important than some other animals. So, you take your whales, your tigers and pandas, dolphins, turtles, all these animals are like, the most important animals for conservation. We all love them. And then some of the lesser important animals, obviously our domestic animals are very important, we love them, but food animals like pigs and cows and rodents and birds, we've been conditioned to think they're not important. They are. We've got to remember that. Now, it's about respecting each member of the Earth community, if you want to consider it that way, respecting their rights, and not, if we're not interested in, if we don't want to respect their rights, of course, we can exploit them, we can use them. If we do want to, maybe we need to start questioning our relationship with animals. Over here is where I think we can have a more balanced approach. So, a lot of the government policies and the way the world's operating is like this. If you can remember one thing from today, guys, if you can picture this, and you think about this stuff, it'll sort of help you frame the way things are and how we should maybe reassess our relationship with this planet. The reason why we've got all this exploitation, environmental harm, is because we think these animals aren't as important as we are, thinking like this. Over here, we consider us all to be of equal importance. Obviously, we don't have the same rights. A shark's got shark rights, a bee's got bee rights. You know, a shark doesn't need the right to vote. We do, you know, as our rights as humans. Think about this. Now, just in conclusion, so one of the things I've been vegan for maybe 2.5 years now. My only regret about going vegan is that I didn't make the connection sooner. If I had all the information that I have now, even 10 years ago, I would have made this change very much sooner. When I first went vegan, first I went vegetarian for about a year because I thought I wanted to do my bit for the animals, but then I realised there's a lot of suffering with eggs and dairy. Over here, this is how my mum saw me after I went vegan. So if anyone can see that, it's just shriveled up, decrepit, like, that's how mum thought I was going to be when I went vegan. It's absolute rubbish. It's just, it's just these, perspectives and, it's just, it doesn't accurately reflect the way things are at all. A lot of myths about protein and all these sort of nutrients. So over here, it says here, there's a little meerkat or something talking to a gorilla. He's like, hey, no meat at all. Are you sure you're getting enough protein? Guess what gorillas are, guys? Vegan. They're vegan. Hippopotamuses, guess what they are? Vegan. Elephants. Vegan. Okay. So we can see that, there's animals out there that can thrive and sustain themselves on a vegan plant-based diet. A lot of the myths around protein just aren't really justified, but everyone will go through their process of, learning and researching and finding out their own truth. So, just for a bit of inspiration for anyone who is considering going down this path and minimising their footprint, Ellen DeGeneres, some famous people that are vegans: Ellen DeGeneres, Liam Hemsworth, Stevie Wonder, Ariana Grande, Miley Cyrus. There's a local vegan fitness model, Chrissy Cavallo. She's in her 40s. Guys, check out this rig. Seriously. How low 40, man. Barney Duplessis, he was Mr. Universe about 3-4 years ago. Solid, man. Obviously, this is ridiculous, but all vegan muscle, man. So there's a lot of people that are adopting this lifestyle for the environment, for the animals. But I encourage you all, don't take what I've said as being the truth. I've tried to give you the most accurate understanding that I know and share that with you guys because I feel it's important that you all know the truth, that you obviously go research things, and if there's anything that sparked your interest today, if it's one line that I've said or anything, go explore it, and question those little voices in the back of your mind which said, I love animals, but then we're still there eating animals, because there's a way we can line those actions and beliefs up. Excellent. So, just in terms of some more resources, as Maddie was saying, there may be things you want to explore. Obviously, there's some grade 11s here as well, and 10s. Probably the 10s are going to be looking at their OT subjects for the next few years. So, ag science, biology, anything like that which may have sparked your interest. Again, check out Environmental Impacts through Cowspiracy. That's a documentary. If you're concerned about morals and ethics, there's plenty of information online. You can see something like Earthlings. It is graphic. But the reason it's graphic is because it is the truth. In terms of health effects, so in addition to minimising our footprint on the planet and the animals, and also it's a plant-based diet is healthy for us, and it's wonderful. I feel great after a few years. Want the health, Fox over knives, food matters. Online, you guys have got the privilege of actually having the internet, social media, YouTube, Instagram, all of these things. I didn't have access to that when I was your age. The amount of research you guys can do in 10 minutes to answer your assessment questions is insane. So use this resource. It's there to help you out and to open your mind and expand our understanding and awareness. So jump on there. If you're concerned about animals' rights, there's a fellow called Gary Francione, for those who want to look about animals' rights and do some research. Carnism, again, Dr. Melanie Joy. There's some activists such as James Aspey, he's a fellow from Australia, also Joey Carbstrong. They're on YouTube, you can check out some of their things they're involved with. Bite Size Vegan, Like the Vegan. I found this website which may be relevant for you guys. It's a wiki page on Be a Vegan Teenager. So Obviously, there's challenges associated with our family and our social encounters. So going vegan can be challenging for some people, but it's an absolute joy. It's not a sacrifice in any way. You may want to check out Vegan Australia as well. It's some important information. So ultimately, guys, the animal agriculture sector is the single most destructive industry on our planet. I wasn't aware of this. The information isn't going to be told to you guys through environmental organisations. The government's definitely not going to tell you. But ultimately, it's about us to make those changes that do align with our beliefs and look at the facts and then make a well-educated decision moving forward with that. But the first thing we need to do that is awareness of issues, okay? And knowledge and understanding. So that's, hopefully my intentions are, if I have planted some seeds with you to go and research some more of this stuff, inspire you to maybe look at making that shift and minimizing your footprint and start challenging, question everything, guys. That's the most important thing. Ultimately, be the change you wish to see in the world. Sharing this information is going to be an important component of my life and my studies, so this is why I'm here today to share some of that with you guys. Now, if anyone is interested in following some of the work I'm doing, I've got some accounts on social media, facebook.com/Scott Walls Activism, and also Instagram, Vegan Vibes, with a 3, the second E instead of an E. But yeah, thank you for your time today, guys, and I just want to welcome any questions and some discussion. Thank you.